The massive ship floated in the darkness of space like a metal mountain. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapons that could destroy entire cities with a single blast. Inside the ship, Admiral Vextara stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back. His yellow eyes stared at the small blue planet spinning slowly below them. Earth, such a tiny world. But it had caused him more trouble than he expected. Vextara belonged to the Zephyrian Empire, the most powerful force in the galaxy. His people had conquered 47 star systems in the past 100 years. They were masters of war, and their warrior class, the Kethver, had never lost a battle. When they found new worlds, they gave the people living there a simple choice: surrender or die. Most chose to surrender. The smart ones always did. "Admiral," called his communications officer from across the bridge. "The humans are ready to hear our message." Vextara nodded. This was always his favorite part. He enjoyed watching the fear in alien faces when they realized how hopeless their situation was. The humans would be no different. "Open the channel," he ordered. The large screen in front of him flickered to life. It showed a human male sitting behind a metal desk. The man looked to be in his 50s, with gray hair and calm blue eyes. He wore a simple military uniform with no fancy decorations. His name appeared on the screen: General Jack Coleman, United Earth Defense Force. "I am Admiral Vextara of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien began, his voice deep and threatening. "I speak for the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We have come to your world to offer you terms." Coleman leaned back in his chair. "I'm listening." "You will surrender immediately and without condition. Your governments will dissolve. Your military forces will stand down. Your people will serve the Empire as we see fit. You have 24 hours to comply." The human's expression didn't change. He simply nodded as if Vextara had told him about the weather. "And if we refuse?" Coleman asked. Vextara's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. "Then we will demonstrate why 47 worlds have chosen to submit rather than face our wrath. We will reduce your cities to ash. We will turn your oceans to steam. We will make your world a monument to the price of defiance." Coleman was quiet for a long moment. Around the bridge, Vextara's officers watched the screen with interest. They had seen this scene play out dozens of times before. Soon the human would begin to beg. They always did. "Admiral," Coleman said finally, "I've been studying your empire for some time now." "Very impressive record. 47 systems conquered in a century. That's quite an achievement." Vextara straightened with pride. "Indeed. We are the greatest warriors the galaxy has ever known." "I'm sure you are," Coleman replied. "But I notice something interesting about your conquests. The Altarians were farmers. The Centauri were merchants. The Vega colonies were made up of scientists and philosophers. You've built quite an empire by conquering people who had never learned to fight." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting that matters?" "Oh, it matters a great deal," Coleman said, and for the first time, something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "You see, Admiral, you've never faced a species that was born for war. You've never fought people who turned killing into an art form before they even left their home planet." Vextara felt a small chill run down his spine, but he pushed it aside. Bold words for someone whose world is about to be destroyed. "Let me tell you something about humans," Coleman continued. "We've been at war for 10,000 years. Not with aliens, but with each other. We fought over land, resources, ideas, and sometimes just because we were bored. We've killed each other with sticks and stones, with swords and arrows, with bullets and bombs. We've turned warfare into entertainment. Our children play war games before they can walk properly." The human leaned forward slightly. "Every human military officer has studied thousands of battles from our history. We've learned from every mistake, perfected every strategy. We know 100 ways to kill an enemy and 1,000 ways to make him wish he was dead. We've been preparing for war our entire existence, Admiral. The only question was when we'd find someone worth fighting." Vextara's 4 hands clenched into fists. Empty boasts from a dying species. Maybe, Coleman said with a shrug. But here's the thing about humans, Admiral. We don't make empty boasts, we make promises. And I promise you this. If you attack our world, you'll discover why we're the apex predator of our planet. You'll learn why every other species on Earth fears us. You'll understand why we had to invent rules of war just to keep ourselves from wiping each other out completely. The transmission ended, leaving Vextara staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. In all their campaigns, no species had ever responded with such casual confidence. Most begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. Some threatened revenge. But none had ever spoken as if they were looking forward to the fight. Admiral, his tactical officer spoke up, our sensors show only 53 human ships in the system. They're heavily outnumbered, yes, Vextara said slowly, but something troubles me. Why aren't they afraid? His second-in-command, Captain. Zethkara stepped forward. Perhaps they're simply ignorant of our capabilities, Admiral. Many primitive species react with bravado when faced with superior force. Perhaps, Vextara murmured, but he wasn't convinced. There had been something in the human's voice, something that suggested he knew exactly what he was facing and didn't care. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving another transmission from the planet. Put it through. This time the screen showed a different human, a woman with short brown hair and green eyes. She wore the same simple uniform as Coleman, but her rank insignia marked her as a colonel. Admiral Vextara, she said, this is Colonel Beth Martinez. General Coleman asked me to share some information with you. What information? Vextara asked suspiciously. We've been monitoring your fleet's approach for the past 3 months. We know the exact specifications of your ships, the number of your troops, and the capabilities of your weapons. We've studied your tactics from your previous conquests. We know how you fight, Admiral. The question is, do you know how we fight? The screen flickered and suddenly it showed images of human warfare throughout history. Battles from ancient times to the modern era flashed across the display. Humans fighting with primitive weapons, then with advanced technology. Always fighting, always improving, always adapting. This is what we do, Martinez continued. This is what we've always done. While other species were building art and philosophy, we were building better ways to kill each other. While they were reaching for the stars, we were reaching for each other's throats. We are a species that has never known peace, Admiral. War is not something we do. War is what we are. The images stopped, and Martinez's face filled the screen again. You have 24 hours to withdraw from our system. After that, we'll show you why every predator on Earth learned to fear the naked ape with the big brain and the stone tools. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Vextara stared at the empty screen, his mind racing. He had conquered 47 worlds, but something about these humans made him uneasy. They spoke of war the way poets spoke of love, with passion and deep understanding. Admiral, Captain Zethkara said quietly, what are your orders? Vextara straightened, pushing his doubts aside. He was a Kethver warrior, descendant of a proud line of conquerors. He would not be intimidated by the boasts of primitives. Prepare the fleet for battle, he ordered. We'll show these humans what happens when they defy the Empire. Signal all ships to assume attack formation. In 24 hours we'll reduce their world to rubble. As his officers hurried to carry out his orders, Vextara returned to staring at the blue planet below. Soon it would be nothing but a burned wasteland, another example of the Empire's power. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not begged. They had not offered tribute. They had not even tried to negotiate. Instead, they had smiled and promised war. And something about that smile made Vextara's blood run cold. 24 hours passed like a countdown to doom. The Zephyrian fleet moved through space in perfect formation. 300 massive warships arranged in the pattern that had brought them victory across the galaxy. Each ship was the size of a small city. bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop anything the universe could throw at them. Admiral Vexthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the World Ender, watching the tactical display. His fleet was spread across millions of cubic kilometers of space, a wall of destruction that no force had ever broken. Behind him, his officers worked at their stations with the quiet confidence of professionals who had never known defeat. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out, "we're detecting the human fleet. 53 ships, just as expected." "Show me," Vexthara ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the human ships hanging in the darkness between Earth and its moon. They were much smaller than Zephyrian vessels, sleek and angular where the alien ships were massive and brutal. They looked almost fragile in comparison, like toys facing real weapons. "Analysis," Vexthara demanded. His tactical officer studied the readings. "The human ships appear to be using some form of advanced alloy construction. Energy signatures suggest fusion reactors, fairly standard for their level of technology. Weapons appear to be particle beam arrays and missile systems. Nothing we haven't seen before. Numbers? 300 ships against 53. We have a 6-to-1 advantage in vessels, and our ships are each 10 times larger than theirs. Conservative estimates suggest we have a 30-to-1 advantage in firepower." Vexthara nodded, his earlier doubts fading. Numbers didn't lie. No amount of bravado could overcome such overwhelming odds. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered. The screen shifted to show the bridge of a human ship. A woman with short, blonde hair and sharp blue eyes stared back at him. Her uniform marked her as a captain, and her name appeared on the screen. Lisa Hayes, commanding officer of the Earthship Defiant. "Admiral," she said with a slight nod. "I was wondering when you'd call." "I am offering you one final chance to surrender," Vexthara said. "Your position is hopeless. You are outnumbered 6-to-1. Your ships are outgunned by factors you cannot hope to match. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Hay smiled, and something about that smile made Vexthara's skin crawl. "Admiral, let me ask you something. In all your conquests, have you ever faced an enemy that wanted to fight you?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, have you ever attacked a species that was hoping you'd show up? A people who were actually excited about the chance to test themselves against the so-called greatest warriors in the galaxy?" Vexthara's mandibles clicked nervously. "You're suggesting you want this battle? Want it?" Hayes laughed. "Admiral, we've been preparing for this fight our entire lives. Every human in this fleet has dreamed of facing a worthy opponent. You think being outnumbered scares us? We've been outnumbered in every important battle in our history. Some of our greatest victories came when we were facing impossible odds." She leaned forward in her command chair. "Let me tell you about a place called Thermopylae. 300 human warriors held off an army of thousands. They knew they were going to die, but they did it anyway because that's what humans do. We don't run from impossible fights, Admiral. We run toward them." The transmission ended, leaving Vexthara staring at an empty screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked uncertain. They had never encountered an enemy that seemed eager for battle. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "we're receiving transmissions from the human fleet. They appear to be talking to each other. Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life with human voices. But instead of desperate battle plans or frightened conversations, the Zephyrians heard something that chilled them to the bone: laughter. "This is going to be fun," one voice said. "About time we got some real action," another replied. "Remember, people, we want to make this last. It's been too long since we had a proper fight. Think they'll put up a good fight? Probably not, but we can hope." Vexthara's four hands clenched into fists. "Turn it off." The laughter stopped, but the memory of it lingered. His enemies weren't afraid. They weren't even nervous. They were excited. "All ships," he broadcast to his fleet, "prepare for battle. We'll show these humans what fear looks like." The Zephyrian fleet began to move, their massive ships closing in on the tiny human force. Their weapons charged with energy that could boil oceans. Their shields hummed with power that could deflect asteroid impacts. This would be a massacre, just like always, but as they approached, something strange happened. The human ships began to move in ways that defied everything the Zephyrians knew about space combat. Instead of forming a battle line or taking defensive positions, they scattered in seemingly random directions. "What are they doing?" Vexthara demanded. "I don't know, sir," his tactical officer replied. "They're not following any recognizable battle pattern." The human ships moved like a school of fish, each one seeming to know exactly where the others were going. They flowed around each other in complex patterns that made no sense to the Zephyrian observers. It was as if they were performing some kind of dance. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm losing track of some of the human ships. They're using some kind of stealth technology." "Impossible," Vexthara snarled. "Our sensors can detect anything." "Not these ships, sir. They're flickering in and out of our detection grid." On the human ship Defiant, Captain Hayes watched her tactical display with satisfaction. The Zephyrian fleet was exactly where she expected it to be, moving in the same formation they had used in 47 previous conquests. Predictable, boring, all. "Ships, this is Hayes," she broadcast to her fleet. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for every species these aliens have conquered. We're fighting for everyone who never got the chance to fight back. Make it count." "Aye, Captain," came the responses from 52 other ships. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks, her tactical officer, looked up from his console. "Captain, the alien fleet is moving into optimal firing range. They'll be able to target us in 30 seconds. "Perfect," Hayes said. "Signal all ships. Execute Pattern 7. The human fleet suddenly exploded into motion. Ships that had been drifting lazily through space suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds. Some vanished entirely, their stealth systems making them invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Others split apart, revealing that what looked like single ships were actually multiple smaller vessels flying in perfect formation. "What?" Vexthara shouted. "Where did they all go?" "Sir?" His sensor operator's voice was tight with panic. "They're everywhere. I'm reading human ships throughout our formation. They're inside our defensive perimeter." The first human attack came without warning. A Zephyrian cruiser suddenly exploded in a ball of fire as something struck it from behind. Then another. Then another. The humans weren't attacking the alien fleet, they were inside it, picking off ships one by one. "Return fire," Vexthara ordered. "All ships, return fire." The Zephyrian fleet opened up with everything they had. Massive energy beams lanced through space, capable of destroying entire cities. Missile salvos that could flatten mountains streaked toward their targets. The firepower was incredible, overwhelming, unstoppable. None of it hit anything. The humans simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. They moved like ghosts, appearing just long enough to strike and then vanishing again. Every shot the Zephyrians fired hit empty space, while every human attack found its mark. "How are they doing this?" Vexthara demanded. "Sir, they're using some kind of predictive system. They know where we're going to shoot before we shoot it." The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the Zephyrians could imagine. The humans had been studying their tactics for months, analyzing every battle the aliens had ever fought. They knew exactly how the Zephyrians would attack because the aliens always attacked the same way. They were predictable. Humans, on the other hand, had learned long ago that predictability in battle meant death. Every human commander had studied thousands of battles, learned to think like dozens of different opponents, adapted strategies that could change from moment to moment. They fought like water, flowing around obstacles and striking where the enemy was weakest. Captain Hayes watched the battle unfold from her command chair, her hands dancing across holographic displays. Around her, her crew worked with the quiet efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Brooks, target their command ship," she ordered. "I want to have another chat with their admiral." "Ma'am, we're in the middle of a battle," Brooks pointed out. "Exactly." Hayes smiled. "Nothing sends a message like being able to hold a conversation while you're kicking someone's ass." The human fleet continued its deadly dance around the Zephyrian formation. What should have been a massacre was becoming a rout, but not in the way anyone had expected. The great Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of 47 worlds, was being systematically destroyed by a force 1/6 its size. And through it all, the humans continued to laugh. The battle had been raging for 30 minutes, and Admiral Vexthara's perfect formation was falling apart. Zephyrian ships exploded one after another, their massive hulls cracking like eggs under precise human fire. The aliens' superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't hit their targets. "Damage report," Vexthara shouted over the chaos on his bridge. "Sir, we've lost 47 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "The humans have lost 3. 3? Vexthara couldn't believe it. His fleet had unleashed enough firepower to destroy a small moon, and they had only managed to kill 3 enemy ships. "Yes, sir. And according to our analysis, those 3 ships were destroyed because their pilots deliberately rammed our vessels to create openings for their allies." The Admiral's forearms trembled with rage and fear. These humans weren't just fighting them, they were sacrificing themselves to win. What kind of species did such things? On the human ship Defiant, Captain Hayes watched the tactical display with professional interest. The Zephyrian fleet was beginning to break formation, their disciplined attack pattern crumbling under pressure. It was exactly what she had expected. "Commander Brooks," she said to her tactical officer, "patch me through to the Zephyrian flagship. I think their admiral needs another chat." "Channel open, Captain." The main screen flickered to life, showing Vexthara's bridge. The alien admiral looked rattled, his yellow eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "Hello again, Admiral," Hayes said pleasantly. "How are you enjoying the battle so far?" "This is impossible," Vexthara snarled. "You're using some kind of advanced technology. These are not fair tactics." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Fair? Admiral, you came here with 6 times as many ships as us, planning to destroy our entire planet. And you're complaining about fair tactics?" "We are honorable warriors," Vexthara replied. "We fight with strength and courage." "No, you fight with overwhelming numbers against people who can't fight back," Hayes corrected. "That's not honor, Admiral. That's bullying. Let me show you what real fighting looks like." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "All ships, this is Hayes. Time for Phase 2. Let's show them what humans do when we stop playing around." Throughout the human fleet, the message was received with grins and excited chatter. They had been holding back, testing the aliens' capabilities. Now it was time to get serious. Commander Steve Martinez piloted his fighter through the chaos of the battle, his small ship dancing between the massive Zephyrian vessels. Around him, his squadron moved in perfect formation, each pilot knowing exactly where the others would be at any given moment. "Banshee Squadron, this is Banshee Leader," Martinez called over the comm. "You see that big bastard at coordinates 7-7-9er? "Copy that, Leader," came the reply from his wingman, Lieutenant Jake Morrison. "That's one of their heavy cruisers." "Let's show them why they call us Banshees," Martinez said. "Follow my lead." The squadron dove toward the Zephyrian cruiser, their small ships accelerating to speeds that would have been impossible for the massive alien vessels. The cruiser's weapons tracked them, firing massive energy beams that could have vaporized a city block, but the humans weren't flying like normal pilots. They were flying like people who had been born to fight, who had turned aerial combat into an art form. They twisted and rolled through the alien fire, their ships seeming to bend the laws of physics as they avoided destruction by mere inches. "Banshee 2, break left," Martinez ordered. "Banshee 3, climb and roll. Banshee 4, stay on my wing." The fighters split apart, each one taking a different approach to the target. The Zephyrian gunners couldn't track them all, couldn't predict their movements. They were used to fighting ships that moved in straight lines, that followed predictable patterns. Humans didn't do predictable. Martinez's fighter screamed past the cruiser's hull, its weapons firing in precise bursts. Each shot hit exactly where it was aimed, finding weak points in the alien armor that the Zephyrians didn't even know existed. Behind him, his squadron followed, their combined fire turning the mighty cruiser into a drifting wreck. "Scratch one heavy cruiser," Martinez reported. "The Banshee squadron is moving to the next target." Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human ships that should have been overwhelmed were instead overwhelming their enemies. They fought like they had been born to it, because in many ways they had. Captain Lucy Thompson commanded the human destroyer Reaper, and she was having the time of her life. Her ship danced through the Zephyrian formation, its weapons picking off enemy vessels with surgical precision. "Ma'am," her weapons officer called out, "we're being targeted by 3 Zephyrian battleships." "They're trying to box us in." "Excellent," Thompson replied. "I was getting bored. All engines, full power. Let's see if they can keep up." The Reaper accelerated straight toward the center of the Zephyrian formation, its hull glowing with the heat of its engines. The alien ships fired everything they had, filling space with enough energy to boil a small ocean. Thompson's ship twisted through the barrage like a dancer, its pilot seeming to know exactly where each shot would be before it was fired. The Zephyrians had never faced pilots like this. Humans, who could predict their every move while remaining completely unpredictable themselves. "Weapons, target their lead ship," Thompson ordered. "I want to send a message." "Aye, ma'am." Target locked. The Reaper's main gun fired once, a precisely aimed shot that struck the Zephyrian battleship's reactor core. The massive alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its destruction taking 2 nearby ships with it. "Message sent," Thompson said with satisfaction. "Next target." Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Vexthara watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by a force that should have been easily defeated. His ships were dying by the dozen, while the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It appears to be ... music? Music?" Vexthara couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Yes, sir. They're playing some kind of battle song while they fight." The bridge speakers crackled to life with the sound of human music, something with a driving beat and aggressive lyrics about victory and conquest. But it wasn't the music that disturbed Vexthara. It was the fact that the humans were playing it at all. They were treating this battle like entertainment, like a game they were enjoying. "Turn it off," he ordered. But the music continued. Broadcast on frequencies that his communications officer couldn't block. The humans wanted him to hear it. They wanted him to know that while his people were dying in terror, they were having fun. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, "we need to withdraw. We've lost over half our fleet. If we continue this battle, we'll be completely destroyed." "No," Vexthara snarled. "We are Kethivore warriors. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. We fight until victory or death." "Sir, with respect, this isn't a fight. It's a massacre. Our tactics aren't working. Our weapons can't hit them. Our formations are useless. These humans fight like nothing we've ever encountered." The Admiral stared at his tactical display, watching the red dots that represented his ships winking out one by one. In all his years of conquest, he had never imagined anything like this. His perfect war machine was being dismantled by an enemy that seemed to exist purely to fight. "How are they doing this?" he asked quietly. "Sir," his intelligence officer spoke up, "I've been analyzing their combat patterns. They're not fighting like a single fleet. They're fighting like 53 separate entities, each one adapting to the situation in real time. They have no central command structure, no rigid tactics. Every ship is free to act as its captain sees fit." "That's chaos," Vexthara protested. "No military force can operate in chaos." "The humans can, sir. They've been training for this kind of warfare their entire existence. While we've been perfecting our formations and standardizing our tactics, they've been learning to improvise, to adapt, to think on their feet." The truth was beginning to sink in. The Zephyrians had built their empire by fighting predictable enemies with predictable tactics. They had never faced a species that treated unpredictability as a virtue, that saw chaos as an opportunity rather than a problem. "Sir," the communications officer called out, We're receiving another transmission from the human fleet commander. Put it through. Captain Hayes appeared on the screen again, looking completely relaxed, despite the battle raging around her. Admiral, I thought you might want to know that we've just received word from our other fleets. What other fleets? Vextara asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. The ones attacking your bases throughout the galaxy, Hayes replied casually. While you were bringing your main force here, we've been visiting your 47 conquered systems. Turns out, a lot of those species you conquered were just waiting for someone to show them how to fight back. The tactical display shifted to show the scope of the human counterattack. Across the galaxy, human ships were engaging Zephyrian forces, and everywhere the pattern was the same. Swift, decisive victories that left the enemy wondering what had hit them. You see, Admiral, Hayes continued, the thing about humans is that we don't just fight. We teach, and we've been teaching your former subjects some very interesting lessons about warfare. Vextara's world crumble. The battle was over in less than 2 hours. What remained of the once mighty Zephyrian fleet drifted in space like broken toys, their hulls cracked and their engines dead. Of the 300 ships that had entered the solar system, only 12 remained intact enough to hold atmosphere. The rest were either destroyed completely or damaged beyond repair. Admiral Vextara sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the destruction of his fleet. His forearms hung limp at his sides, and his yellow eyes were dull with shock. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, trying to keep their dying ship operational. Sir, his tactical officer said softly, the humans are hailing us. Vextara nodded slowly. He had expected this. The victors always wanted to speak with the defeated. Put them through, he said. General Coleman appeared on the screen, sitting in the same simple office where this had all begun. His expression was calm, neither angry nor triumphant. He looked like a man who had just finished a routine task. Admiral, Coleman said, I think it's time we had a proper conversation. What do you want? Vextara asked, his voice barely above a whisper. To understand, Coleman replied. Your empire conquered 47 star systems. You ruled over billions of people, and you did it all the same way, didn't you? Same tactics, same strategies, same threats. It worked every time. Until now, Vextara said bitterly. Until now, Coleman agreed. Do you know why it worked, Admiral? It wasn't because you were better warriors. It was because you were fighting. People who didn't know how to fight back. You built your empire on the backs of peaceful species who had never learned the art of war. The human leaned forward in his chair. But humans are different. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We've had wars that lasted decades, battles that killed millions, conflicts that spanned entire continents. We've made every mistake you can make in warfare, and we've learned from every single one. Then why? Vextara asked. Why didn't you warn them? Why didn't you teach them before we came? Coleman's expression grew sad, because we didn't know they existed. We've been trapped in our own system, fighting each other while the rest of the galaxy lived in peace. We thought we were alone. A new voice joined the conversation. May I, General? The screen split to show another human, this one wearing the uniform of a historian. Her name appeared as Dr. Sarah Kim, Military History Division. Admiral, Doctor. Kim said, I've been studying your empire's military records. Very interesting reading. You've been using the same basic tactics for over 1,000 years. Standard formation attacks, overwhelming firepower, predictable patterns. It's actually quite impressive how consistent you've been. Our tactics have brought us victory across the galaxy, Vextara said defensively. Against farmers and merchants. Dr. Kim replied. But you see, Admiral, that's exactly the problem. You've never had to adapt. You've never faced an enemy that forced you to change your methods. You've been playing the same game for 1,000 years, and you've gotten very good at it. She pulled up a holographic display showing various battle formations. Humans play a different game entirely. We call it evolution. Every time we fight, we learn something new. Every defeat teaches us how to win the next battle. We've been forced to constantly adapt, to constantly improve, because if we didn't, we died. That's why you defeated us so easily, Vexthara realized. You've been preparing for this battle your entire existence, even though you didn't know it. Exactly, Dr. Kim nodded. Every human military academy teaches the history of warfare. Every officer studies battles from ancient times to the present. We know what works, what doesn't, and most importantly, we know that what works today might not work tomorrow. General Coleman took over the conversation again. Admiral, let me ask you something. In your 1,000 years of conquest, how many times did you change your tactics? Vexthara thought for a moment. We refined our approaches, improved our weapons. But did you fundamentally change how you fought? Coleman pressed. Did you ever completely abandon a strategy that had worked before? No, Vexthara admitted. Why would we? Our methods brought us victory, because that's what warriors do, Coleman said. They adapt, they evolve. They learn from every fight, even the ones they win. You see, Admiral, winning isn't enough. You have to understand why you won, and you have to be ready to change everything if your next opponent is different. The screen switched to show Captain Hayes, now back on her ship. Behind her, the human fleet was regrouping, their ships moving, with the same deadly precision they had shown in battle. Admiral, Hayes said, I want you to understand something. This wasn't personal. We don't hate you or your people. But we couldn't let you continue what you were doing. What do you mean? Vexthara asked. Those 47 systems you conquered? They're full of people who never learned to fight because they never needed to. They built beautiful civilizations, created art and music and literature. They reached for the stars with hope, not with weapons, and you took that away from them. Hayes' expression hardened. We've been listening to their stories, Admiral. Stories of families torn apart, of cultures destroyed, of people forced to live in fear. You turned paradise into prison, and you did it because you could. We brought order to chaos, Vexthara protested. We gave those worlds stability, purpose. You gave them slavery, Hayes replied. There's a difference. The conversation was interrupted by another human voice. General, this is Colonel Danny Wilson aboard the Retribution. We've received reports from Strike Group 7. Put him through, Coleman ordered. A new face appeared on the screen, a man with graying hair and tired eyes. Sir, we finished our sweep of the Altair system. The Zephyrian garrison has surrendered. The Altarians are free. Casualties? Coleman asked. Minimal, sir? The Zephyrian forces didn't know how to fight an enemy that actually fought back. Most of them surrendered. As soon as they realized they were outmatched. Vexthara listened to the report with growing horror. His empire wasn't just being defeated in one battle, it was being systematically dismantled across the galaxy. How many systems? He asked quietly. Coleman checked his display. 32 so far. We expect to liberate all 47 within the next week. But that's impossible, Vexthara protested. You only have a few ships. How can you be attacking so many places at once? Because we're not just humans anymore, Coleman explained. We're teachers. Every species your empire conquered is now learning to fight. We're showing them how to build weapons, how to organize resistance, how to take back their freedom. Dr. Kim rejoined the conversation. Admiral, did you know that? The Centauri had developed some fascinating theories about space combat before your conquest. They just never had to put them into practice. The vegans had created some remarkable defensive technologies. They just never thought they'd need them. What are you saying? Vexthara asked. I'm saying that your empire wasn't built on conquest, Dr. Kim replied. It was built on the fact that nobody ever fought back. But now they are fighting back, and they're fighting with human tactics and human weapons and human determination. The screen showed images from across the galaxy. Altarian ships, built with human technology and crewed by people who had spent decades dreaming of freedom. Centauri fighters, piloted by former slaves who had learned to fight from human instructors. Vegan defensive platforms protecting worlds that had been defenseless for generations. You see, Admiral, Coleman said, we didn't just defeat your fleet, we started a revolution. Every species in your empire is rising up, and they're all using the same tactics that destroyed your fleet here. But why? Vextara asked. Why help them? What do you gain? We gain allies, Coleman replied. We gain friends. We gain the knowledge that we're not alone in the universe, and that there are good people out there who deserve to be free. Hayes spoke up again. Admiral, humans have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But we have another saying too, the oppressed deserve freedom. We're fighting for both. And now? Vexthara asked, what happens to my people? That depends on you, Coleman sighed. Your empire is finished, your fleets are destroyed. Your conquered worlds are free, but your people don't have to die? They can learn to live in peace, to be part of something better than what they had before. You're offering us mercy? Vextara couldn't believe it. We're offering you a choice, Coleman replied. You can continue to fight and we'll destroy what's left of your forces, or you can surrender and we'll help you rebuild. Not as conquerors, but as citizens of a free galaxy. The Admiral looked around his damaged bridge at his defeated crew. At the tactical display that showed the destruction of everything he had believed in. His empire was gone, his fleet was broken, his people were scattered across the galaxy, but they were still alive. And perhaps in this strange new world the humans were creating, that was enough. What would you have us do? He asked finally. Learn. Coleman said simply. Learn to live without conquering. Learn to build instead of destroy. Learn to be part of something greater than yourselves. And if we refuse? Coleman's expression grew hard. Then you'll learn why every predator on Earth fears the species that invented warfare. Vexthara was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened. His perfect empire built 6 months had passed since the Battle of Earth, and the galaxy was a very different place. The Zephyrian Empire no longer existed. In its place stood something new, the Galactic Federation, a voluntary alliance of free worlds that had chosen cooperation over conquest. Admiral Vextara sat in a simple room on the human space station Liberty, staring out at the stars through a large window. He was no longer an admiral, that rank had died with his empire. Now he was simply Vextara, a prisoner of war who had chosen to help rebuild rather than die fighting. The door opened behind him, and he turned to see General Coleman entering the room. The human looked older than he had 6 months ago, the weight of reshaping the galaxy showing in the lines around his eyes. How are you adjusting? Coleman asked, taking a seat across from the former admiral. It's strange, Vextara replied. For 1,000 years my people knew only conquest. We woke each day planning new battles, new worlds to claim. Now we wake up and wonder what we're supposed to do with ourselves. That's normal, Coleman said. Change is hard, especially when it's forced on you, but you're adapting. Your people are adapting, Vextara nodded slowly. It was true. The surviving Zephyrians had been scattered across the galaxy, some imprisoned, others working to repair the damage they had caused. Many had chosen to stay on the worlds they had once conquered, learning to live as equals rather than masters. I've been studying, Vextara said. Reading human military history, as you suggested. It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time. What have you learned? That humans are the most violent species in the galaxy, Vextara replied. But also the most capable of change. You fought wars that lasted centuries, but you've also made peace with your greatest enemies. You've committed terrible atrocities, but you've also sacrificed everything to save people you barely knew. Coleman leaned back in his chair. We're complicated. We always have been. That's what makes us human. I think I'm beginning to understand why you won so easily, Vextara said. It wasn't just your tactics or your weapons. It was your nature. You're a species that's comfortable with contradiction. You can be peaceful and violent, generous and ruthless, all at the same time. And your people? My people are learning to be contradictory too, Vextara said with something that might have been a smile. It's not easy. We were raised to be soldiers, to follow orders, to never question authority. But humans have been teaching us to think for ourselves. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. A young human woman entered, carrying a data pad and wearing the uniform of a diplomatic aide. "General," she said, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've received word from the Altair system. The reconstruction is complete." "Thank you, Lieutenant Peterson," Coleman said. "Any problems?" "None, sir. The Altarians are actually ahead of schedule. They've rebuilt their capital city and established a new government. They're requesting membership in the Federation." Coleman nodded. "Tell them they're welcome." "Any word from the other systems?" 39 of the former Zephyrian territories have joined the Federation, sir. The remaining 8 are still considering their options, but we expect them to join within the next few months. After the lieutenant left, Coleman turned back to Vexthara. 47 systems, he said. "In 6 months, we've helped rebuild 47 civilizations. Do you know what that means?" "That humans are as good at building as they are at destroying," Vexthara suggested. "It means that your empire might have been the best thing that ever happened to the galaxy," Coleman replied. "Not because of what you did, but because of what you made possible." Vexthara looked confused. "I don't understand." "Before your empire, these 47 systems were isolated from each other. They lived in peace, but they lived alone. They had no contact with other species, no sharing of knowledge or culture. They were safe, but they were also stagnant." Coleman stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Your conquests forced them to work together. When we helped them fight back, they had to cooperate, to share resources and tactics. For the first time in their history, they were part of something bigger than themselves. And now? Now they're members of the Federation. They're sharing technology, art, music, literature. They're learning from each other, growing together. The galaxy is becoming more connected, more diverse, more alive than it's ever been." Vexthara was quiet for a long moment. "So my empire's greatest achievement was its destruction?" "In a way, yes," Coleman replied. "You brought these worlds together, even if you didn't mean to. You gave them a common enemy, a shared struggle. And when that struggle was over, they chose to stay together. What about my people? Do they have a place in this new galaxy?" Coleman returned to his seat. "That's up to them. We're not going to force anyone to join the Federation. But we're also not going to let anyone rebuild an empire based on conquest. Your people can choose to be part of something better, or they can choose to be left behind. And if they choose to fight again, then we'll stop them again," Coleman said simply. "But this time we won't be fighting alone. We'll have allies, friends, people who know what it's like to be free and want to stay that way." The door opened again, and this time it was Captain Hayes who entered. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just finished a long and difficult job. "General," she said, "we've received word from the exploration fleets. They found 12 more systems with signs of intelligent life." "Zephyrian colonies?" Coleman asked. "No, sir. These are species that were never conquered. They've been hiding, staying quiet, hoping the Empire would never find them. Now they're coming out of hiding, asking to join the Federation." Coleman smiled. "How many is that now?" 73 systems, sir. "And we're getting reports of more every day. It seems like half the galaxy was just waiting for someone to stand up to the Zephyrians." Hayes turned to Vexthara. "Admiral, I thought you should know. Your former subordinate, Captain Zethkara, has been working with the Centauri to establish a new trade route. He's actually quite good at it." "Zethkara?" Vexthara was surprised. "He was one of my best commanders. I thought he would never accept defeat." "He hasn't," Hayes replied. "He's just found a different way to serve his people. Instead of conquering markets, he's creating them. Instead of taking resources, he's finding ways to share them. He's still a leader, just a different kind of leader." "And the others? They're adapting too," Hayes said. "Some faster than others, but they're learning. It helps that they have teachers who understand what it's like to be warriors without a war." Coleman nodded. "That's something humans know all about. We've been dealing with that problem for generations. What do you do with soldiers when the fighting stops? How do you turn warriors into citizens? And what did you learn?" Vexthara asked. That the skills that make good soldiers can also make good teachers, good builders, good leaders, Coleman replied. Discipline, courage, the ability to work under pressure, these things are valuable in peace as well as war. But what about the need to fight? Vexthara pressed. My people were born for war. How do we live without it? Hayes sat down next to Coleman. Admiral, let me ask you something. What did you really love about being a warrior? Was it the killing, or was it the challenge? Was it the destruction, or was it the chance to test yourself against impossible odds? Vexthara thought for a moment. The challenge, he said finally. The chance to prove myself, to overcome obstacles, to achieve something great. Then you'll fit right in, Hayes said with a smile. Because rebuilding the galaxy is the greatest challenge any of us will ever face. It's going to take courage, determination, and the willingness to fight for what you believe in. The only difference is that now you're fighting for something instead of against it. Coleman stood up. Vexthara, I have an offer for you. The Federation needs advisors, people who understand military strategy and logistics. We need someone who can help us prepare for the next threat, because there's always a next threat. You want me to help you build an army? I want you to help us build a defense force, Coleman corrected. There's a difference. An army conquers. A defense force protects. We need people who understand both sides of warfare, how to fight and how to prevent fighting. Vexthara was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the offer. For 6 months, he had been a prisoner, a defeated enemy kept alive out of mercy. Now he was being offered a chance to serve again, to be part of something greater than himself. What would my people think? He asked finally. They'd think you were doing what good leaders do, Hayes replied. Adapting to new circumstances, finding ways to serve your people's best interests. Some of them might not understand at first, but they'll learn. And if I refuse? Then you'll spend the rest of your life in comfortable captivity, Coleman said. We won't force you to help us, but we also won't let you go back to the old ways. Vexthara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his people were learning to live in a galaxy they no longer dominated. Some were struggling, some were thriving, but all of them were changing. I accept, he said finally, but I have one condition. Name it, Coleman replied. I want to visit the worlds my empire conquered. I want to see what they've built, what they've become. I want to understand what we took from